Prisons have never really succeeded in reforming those whose lives these institutions have claimed. But of course, the assumption that prisons rehabilitate is one that we have lived with for a very long time. The current corporatization and privatization of imprisonment, the involvement of corporations in the process of punishment, indicates that that corporations that we would never associate with prison institutions have a stake in the continuation of the prison system because they're earning money from it. They're providing the soap that prisoners use to bathe themselves. They're providing the food. Healthcare is outsourced. But I would also say that under conditions of global capitalism, prisons have become a place to deposit those who no longer have a place in society. Surplus populations, those who were considered to be garbage. And so that is why all over the world, not only in the U.S., but all over the world, we see people of color, or people from the southern region, people from the global south in prison. In Europe, you see people from the global south. In Australia, you see Aboriginal people. In the U.S., you see immigrants, and you see black people and Latinos. The punishment has become racialized. The last two books I wrote, small, short books, revolve around the theme of imprisonment, both within the U.S., but also imprisonment as a global phenomenon. Its connection with global capitalism, its connection with the so-called war on terror. I'm concerned about the fact that under the Bush administration, the prison became one of the main signs of U.S. involvement in the world. As a matter of fact, a kind of stand-in for the particular kind of democracy the U.S. Government was attempting to impose on the rest of the world, especially, of course, the Middle East. I try to use the notion of anti-slavery abolition to think about the possibility of prison abolition. And I specifically took W.E.B. Du Bois's notion of an abolition democracy in order to indicate that what we really need to do to address the horrendous imprisonment bans, more than 2.3 million people behind bars, 1 in 100 adults in prison in this country. What we really need to do is to create the kinds of institutions that address the problems that the prison attempts to solve, but cannot solve, because we're talking about a range of social problems. I and many others have embraced the idea that it is possible to abolish prisons. Not so much to reform them, but to abolish prisons as the primary and most dominant mode of punishment. And that would entail not so much tearing down all the institutions now, which might not be a bad idea, but it would entail creating those institutions that would render the prison superfluous. And so if we had better schools, if we had better health care, if we had conditions of life for people who, that would give people some hope. So many of the people who are in prison are there because they've had no hope, they've had no future. And so the idea is to create a new society. Perhaps this is what Obama means when he talks about change. At least this is the kind of change that I would like to see happen. So it would no longer be necessary to hold huge numbers of people, black people especially, behind bars. I'm Angela Davis, and you're watching Reelblack.